Coming to you from lovely downtown Santa Rosa, it's the Backstage Sonoma Radio Show. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
In 2000, trombonist, bassist, composer, and producer Adam Theis co-founded Jazz Mafia, an artist collective of forward-thinking and accomplished players in electro, hip-hop, world, classical, and jazz. 20 years in the making, Jazz Mafia is a creative staple of the classic San Francisco sound. Their website has a page titled Bands, which shows 9 different side projects the band explores. On today's show, we'll explore the Grateful Brass, which reimagines the iconic music of the Grateful Dead, featuring brass, drums, and vocals, but no guitar. Adam Theis will explain everything, including the upcoming Jerry Garcia birthday celebration show at Blue Note in Napa on August 2nd. But first, let's get things started with a taste of Jazz Mafia. Welcome to Backstage Sonoma, Adam. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm really excited about this interview and the Grateful Brass. Before we take a deep dive into the Grateful Brass, how and when did Jazz Mafia come together?
Around the very late 90s, I started playing a jazz venue in San Francisco in North Beach, and it's kind of confusing because it was called Black Cat, and there's a venue in San Francisco that's a jazz venue now called Black Cat, but they're unrelated, strangely enough, and I played at both of them. But this club was really special. It was in a basement. It had that kind of feeling like, man, I bet some really cool music happens down here, when you first walk in. And the manager there who was in charge of the music was very unusual in that instead of asking the bands to play quieter and play more songs people knew and play stuff people could dance to or whatever, the typical things musicians get asked to do, it was the opposite. And he would encourage us to explore new musical, past boundaries and bring in electronics, put our horns through electronics, collaborate with DJs. And this was just like a dude who ran a bar. He wasn't a musician or anything. It was so weird. So anyways, that I was already into pushing boundaries, but also was very well aware of economics and you kind of got to play stuff that people can get into. And so it was really came at such a perfect time for me just out of college. I'd just moved to San Francisco and here's this opportunity. So that's what started Jazz Mafia, is having a weekly residency where we were encouraged to just, create new things, new music, completely improvise sometimes, just get up on stage and just play whatever and try to make it, sound good. And so that led to, let's have this project that does this kind of music. And then, we met this vocalist. So, okay, we're going to start a project with that vocalist, that same band, but it's a different band, And that kind of just kept cells dividing. It just kept duplicating into these different projects that had different focuses with some of the same musicians, and maybe not. Maybe a new project would be all different musicians, but through the years, that's what's been the evolution.
Nice. What a wonderful creative way to start a band.
Yeah, I mean, I'd already up when I lived in Sonoma County. That's where I grew up. I had a group called Cannonball, and that was such an uphill battle. Like the thing I said about the clubs asking me to play quieter and stuff. I kind of had the school of hard knocks with that group. So we were kind of like the square peg trying to fit in the round hole up there. But I was able to build something. And so I think I learned a lot of really valuable skills from that. If you wanted to have an audience show up at your show in Sonoma County in 1996 playing jazz, like you had to work really.
It was a little different back then, let's say. I mentioned in the intro, Jazz Mafia has 9 different configurations. How did all these multiple personalities, if you will, take shape?
I'm always open to the external forces that come our way. And I think rather than resisting things, like I know and respect many musicians who say, it's the Adam Theis project or whatever. And that's what they do. It's their name. And people ask them, hey, could you do some stuff like we're doing a Jerry Garcia thing? Would you be down to do some Grateful Dead music? They'd be like, no, that is not my thing. And you know what I mean? And so when people call and ask for different things, I've always thought it's like a challenge to maybe take on. And so early on, like say, for example, with our brass band, we were doing a lot of horn related stuff, things with horn sections and stuff, funk and mixing jazz. And people started calling us asking, hey, we're doing this New Orleans thing for Mardi Gras here in the Bay Area. Could you put a brass band together? I mean, it seems right up your alley, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually quite different having, like a funk band with 3 horns going from that to a street parade thing with tuba and marching drums. And I did a little bit of marching stuff in high school, but not like that. And so I, found a tuba player somehow. And I ended up learning tuba because of that, because I said yes to these gigs and there weren't really tuba players around. And so I knew someone who had a tuba. Anyway, very long story, but it would have been so much easier just to be like, nah, we don't do that. And just focused on whatever that one project we had at that point was, or whatever, that couple projects. But just taking things on lead to new fun adventures. And I've always been curious, was always curious about brass band music. So we kind of took a deep dive, and because we jumped into it so fast, we weren't doing a traditional thing. We were kind of doing like half what Jazz Mafia does, using original music and our own approach. And I think we really enjoyed doing it because it was this new framing for the music that had all been experimenting with. So our brass band, we were doing like electronic influenced acoustic brass band music, like using these like weird grooves that DJs were coming up with in the 90s and early 2000s, drum and bass and dubstep came later. And it's just a super fun challenge. So anyways, that has happened countless times where something pops up like that and we'll try it. Sometimes it's a one-time thing. It's like, oh, that was cool, but we're not going to put that on our website as a project on our roster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in the Grateful Brass one, I'm probably jumping the gun, but that came out of a similar thing because I've growing up in Sonoma County, brushed in with a lot of Grateful Dead culture and music here and there, never really got turned on to it in a way that resonated with me deeply until I played with Mickey Hart 10 years ago. I toured with him. I recorded with him on a record, and a bunch of people from Jazz Mafia were going through his band at that time and in his touring group and all that. And so we were having a lot of fun playing with him, and he would do like maybe half of his set would be Grateful Dead stuff, or maybe a third depending on his mood. But it was like, we had to learn about 40 Grateful Dead songs, and there was a number of them that I was like, these are really cool tunes, from a compositional standpoint, which is a big thing for me. And so I kind of had it in the back of my mind. And then when I started playing with Bob Weir in 2020, we had to learn like hundreds of songs. And so that list got bigger and bigger of songs that I was like, it would be fun to mess with, like a jazz setting. And then I started thinking, like you said, what would be the most interesting version, like a really interesting version of Grateful Dead instrumentation? Well, get rid of the guitars and put it on brass. And so we'd already been experimenting with that in our brass band, doing like 60s rock songs like White Rabbit and stuff like that. Like, let's just continue down that road. And
Yeah.
tried it and it worked great. The first show was awesome. And then it was like, well, duh, we're going to keep doing this.
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
momentum here, let the water just flow.
That's great. Well, you sent over some music to play for our listeners, and I'm really excited to play it. The first one is a very different take on China Cat Sunflower. What's the backstory here?
It's a tune that I had arranged for what's called the Wolf Pack with Bob Weir, which is 3 horns and 2 strings. And that was where I got really familiar with the song. And, it's just another one of those ones where it's like, oh, this is so cool how it goes into this different harmony here. And so there's plenty of meat there to work with, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of stuff to grab onto. And so I started envisioning my own version of it. And it's like, okay, well, when it goes to this section, I'm going to put it in 7/4 time signature instead of 4/4. And I'm going to do this, but not take it too far. Like, there's this tradition in like collegiate jazz to take songs and rearrange them. And it's almost, you can almost not recognize the song sometimes. And, I'm like, I went to college, and sometimes I'm like, I don't even hear the song. It sounds cool. But so I wanted to keep it grounded and have non-musicians still be able to hear the Grateful Dead song and people who understand that music. And so we take it far, and it goes on quite a journey. I think we end up in Jamaica. We start out in San Francisco, and we end up in Jamaica on this one.
Yeah, that can happen. Well, here's a very different take of China Cat Sunflower, and you're listening to it on Cows FM. If you're just joining us, I'm speaking with Jazz Mafia's co-founder, Adam Theis. Adam, I understand you have a full-length Grateful Brass album in the works. How's that coming along?
It is awesome. I had a little bit of a hiccup in that we have a 13-year-old daughter now, and so the record was getting pretty close, and then I was hoping to finish it before she was born, and it just didn't happen. But it's a lot of the records that Jazz Mafia's put out have marinated for a while, and it's always better to just let it sit for a minute, and I always come up with cool new ideas for things to finish the song. So it'll be out by the end of the year, or at least the songs will be coming out from it. You know how everybody releases music now. It's like a song here, a song there.
Yeah. That's the way we buy it or listen to it these days. Do you have a working title so far?
No, I'm open for ideas.
I wish I had one for you. Yeah, but I'm sure you'll come up with something cool. Let's listen to another track by the Grateful Brass. This one's called Bird Song. What can you tell our listeners about this?
Yeah, so I arranged China Cat Sunflower, but everybody in the band has arrangements in our repertoire, and this one's arranged by our saxophonist, Tommy Okudo, and he's been a long-time pillar in Jazz Mafia, really awesome arranger. He doesn't have a lot of songs that he's brought in, but the ones he does are just great works. And I was so surprised when I heard this one. And an interesting bit of trivia is he told me later that he was inspired by another version that he heard of Birdsong by a local group called the T Sisters that we've collaborated with some other Jazz Mafia bands. They're incredible. It's he heard their version, which is more a cappella-ish, bluegrass-ish or something. and then flipped their version into a brass band version. So it's just the beauty of music, right? It's this kind of gets passed around, and hopefully everyone puts their own unique thing on it and doesn't just try to like do the same thing with the same songs.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. The T Sisters will be coming up on a future show on Backstage Sonoma. So I'm glad you brought them up.
Yeah. Ask them about their collaboration with Jazz Mafia. We did a fun one with them.
Okay, I will. That'll be fun. But now let's listen to the Grateful Brass doing Bird Song here on Cows FM. Adam from Jazz Mafia is my guest today on Backstage Sonoma. Adam, I was curious as to the kind of feedback you get from the Deadheads on the Grateful Brass.
Yeah, nobody has ever said, hey, have you thought about adding guitar? I think everybody gets it in that scene. And I have had a lot of people ask me that with other Jazz Mafia bands, because we have, well, obviously the brass band, but there's a lot of other groups too that we'll have maybe a drummer, a bass player, and a string trio, or whatever, different. And so that I think that's cool that everybody in the community seems to get that. I'm sure a lot of people would love to see a guitar guest with us, and we've had, like, Reed Matthews has guested with us before, and we will have some guest guitar players on the record. But for us, that being embraced in that way, like, that people understand, oh, this is another, you're looking at a prism of the music, this tradition of this music, and you're just seeing it from another side. And if you look at artists like Mickey and Bobby, they do that in their music too. Like, at a certain point, when around whatever 2014, I'll just guess, Bob Weir started doing the Wolf Brothers trio, and it's like a Tiny Desk version of Grateful Dead. It's just him, upright bass and drums. And so he wanted to reimagine those songs and imagine, okay, well, how would they sound if they were stripped down and didn't have the electric guitars and stuff like that. And when I first asked Bobby, when I was putting this project together, I was like, hey, so I want to do this brass band thing. Like, is that cool with you? Or, whatever. I'm in your band, so I just thought I should ask him. He was like, hell yeah.
Oh, good.
But I think that people in that community are really ready for some different things. And I'm ready to hear some people take it too far and have people be like, that's too much. That's too weird. But I haven't seen that. I've seen there's a salsa Grateful, like an Afro-Cuban Grateful Dead thing that I've heard that is like, I think they take it way further than we do, and they're having success. They might, I don't know if they got nominated for a Grammy, but anyway, they're doing really well. So I think it's time, yeah.
Well, thank you for keeping the music alive.
For sure.
Speaking of the upcoming Jerry Garcia birthday celebration at the Blue Note in Napa, what can fans look forward to?
We're going to be adding some new things, especially for the show. I don't want to give anything away, but it will be special in that sense. And it's also a rare chance to hear the band in the North Bay. The Grateful Brass hasn't played in the North Bay more than like one or two times in our 3 or so years. So that's in the venue. It's just beautiful room. The sound's amazing.
Oh,
yeah, we're really excited to be back there. We had this kind of Prince birthday thing that we do every year up there in June, and it was a sold out show, and so great to be back there. We hadn't played there since before the pandemic.
Yeah, it's a great area. I love it out there. Let me remind our listeners that Jazz Mafia's Grateful Brass Jerry Garcia birthday celebration, and that's a mouthful, all takes place at the Blue Note Music Club in Napa on Friday, August 2nd. The show starts at 8 p.m. and doors open at 6. For tickets and more info, go to bluenotejazz.com/Napa. And that's where you can find tickets and a little bit more information about the show. Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about the Grateful Brass and the upcoming project. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
All Backstage Sonoma interviews and playlists are readily available on BackstageSonoma.com. Thanks for listening and your support.
Would you like to be a guest on Backstage Sonoma? It's easy. Drop the host an email at backstagesonoma@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to the Backstage Sonoma radio show on Cows FM. Join us next time for more great interviews and music from local and touring musicians.